Julia, thank you for your introduction and for inviting me, everybody, the International Women's Day. I was asked to talk about the history of economic science and also a bit more broadly introduce feminist economics to those who are not familiar in the field. So that's what I'm planning to do, and share my screen. Okay. And I plan to, during this talk, I would like to show the relevance of feminist history of economics and the impact it may have on shifting the perspectives on the history of economic thought and on the economy towards one that includes the concerns and interests of women and women of color. So where are we now in economics? We come from a centuries-long domination of white men in the field, and that has had a profound impact on the topics that are studied, the questions that are pursued, and the methods used, and the answers that are considered acceptable. So women have been absent from the table where decisions were made in economics. And it is still the case that only 15% of the professors, when we look, for instance, at the US, are women. And when we are talking about women of color, we are talking about single digits. So this has led to a theoretical approach in economics that is ahistorical, that takes the status quo in the industrial economy as a given while focusing on marginal changes, and that does not take the unpaid work of women into account, nor the exploitation of natural resources. So feminist economists, particularly over the past 3 decades, have been criticizing mainstream economics from a feminist perspective at various levels and in various subfields of economics. So in micro and macroeconomics, in labor economics, in development economics, and in the philosophy and history of economics. And they broadened the perspectives in all these fields, including women, and by taking gender, race, and location into account. So today I will focus on the history of economics. In the history of economics, we have been taught that only 2 women made it to the surface of the history of economic thought, right? So there's, of course, Joan Robinson, and then maybe some people know about Rosa Luxemburg. Okay, and most recently, and a few of you might be familiar with, for instance, Jane Marset, Harriet Martineau, and perhaps Priscilla Wakefield, I don't know. So a few of you know many more names by now, right? There's some substantial literature emerging now. But under students and under most economies, this is kind of about it. And the general idea is that this is enough, right? And some say more than enough. The current narrative that is taught in courses on the history of economic thought more or less looks like this. So most of you will recognize this as a list of contents of a textbook in the history of economic thought, right? So it starts more or less with 1776, Adam Smith, Role of Nation, and there's a strong focus on individuals, on white and middle-class men in England and Western Europe more in particular. And generally, an internalist approach is applied, meaning that the history of economic thought is considered to be the result of rational reasoning between these individuals, right, and the debate between these guys. By now, this narrative is more or less becoming set in stone. When we look through a feminist lens, however, to the development of economic thought, we ask the question, where are the women? And what is the impact of taking a gender-aware or feminist perspective by systematically bringing in the voices of women, all kinds of women, right? Women of different classes, different location, color, etc. and bring those into the narrative of the history of economics, right? What starts to happen then, okay? Because women, and I have made the attempt to go back really to the really early days of the study of the economy, they always wrote about economic aspects of their lives. Yeah. For example, quite a few women wrote early on about marriage as an economic institution because the rules around marriage laws, really set the boundaries of what they could do economically, to what extent they could gather wealth and protect themselves from poverty, right? Whereas political economists perceived marriage as a side issue. Yes, it was, the family was considered a pre-capitalist institution, ahistorical and not of much interest. So women wrote, and they wrote account books, they wrote diaries, they wrote letters, poems, brochures, pamphlets, novels, important means to express their thoughts and ideas about the economy of their time, and of course papers, essays, and books. So more and more common academic outlets, so to say. So recently, an increasing amount of research has been done on early women economists like Harriet Martineau, Beatrice Bottle-Webb, Charlotte Perkins Gilman in the later 19th century, early 20th century, and later. But I've been always particularly interested in what happened around the emergence of political economy in the 18th century. So what I've been doing is collecting women's economic writers and their full texts. And I published these in a set of volumes to make them more readily available for those who are interested. So you can find these texts in volume 1 of the Routledge Make a Work series on feminist economics, edited by Drusilla Barker and me, and in a 3-volume series on 18th century women's economics thought, also published by Routledge. So Routledge has been really supportive of this whole endeavor. These about 60 texts formed the basis for my recent book, The Herstory of Economic Thought, which is published by Quality Press as an undergraduate textbook. So there it is. So from these texts, reading, analyzing, rereading them, emerged a set of themes. So, and that became the focus points in a history of economic thought. So I started with economia, very early field of research on the household, economic behavior of the household. Then new and gendered morality of capitalism. Again, there it is, marriage as an economic institution, the disposition of women and the ethics around money. Education, really important through history for women and the women's movement. So, and then, of course, production, women taking part in production, contributing, the distribution, gender wage gaps, etc., etc. Women did a lot of work on consumption, relatively much research on government policies, and they have been crucial in the emergence of economic theory and sustainable development. So what I'll do, by linking these themes and relating the discussions to those of male political economists and liberal economics, a narrative developed through these themes. So for now, I would like to flesh out 4 themes to give you an idea of what happens to the history of economic thought when you bring in women's voices. So instead of starting in 1776 with Adam Smith, I go back to what is considered the very origin of economic thought, the Greek philosophers. So the first text I refer to is from Xenophon, his Economicus of 362 BC. Okay, this is a text of a man. It is really difficult to find that early kind of texts of women that have remained So, because the Xenophon's text addresses the household in pretty much detailed, I thought this would be a good choice. So, in his booklet, Xenophon focuses on the household as the main unit of analysis, and he writes quite a bit about the role of women in the household. He enters into a dialogue with Socrates. It's actually a really nice book to read. So he lets Socrates conclude that the wealth of the household depends importantly on the training and skills of the housewife. So this is one of the untold stories in history of economic thought. So going back to these early texts can also be really, really enlightening. Okay, from then on, the literature that develops with a focus on the household talks about the knowledge, the skills, how to run a household well. So to some extent, they are manuals. They tell people how to cook, how to remove stains, how to clean, how to conserve. But that goes much further, and it also talks about how to deal with personnel, how to invest your wealth, things like that. So women were very well represented under the authors of these books. And these books go beyond just the training of young women, and they also address how to run your own household and estate. So a few examples of this kind of writings are, for instance, Grisel Bailey of Jarvis Goods household books. These cover more than 30 years of account books. And as I mentioned before, they go way beyond just household budgets, and gives much more than only the numbers. So Griselda Bailly is an interesting figure in Scottish aristocracy. She ran actually practically 3 large estates, her own estate, did the books for her father, and she did her books for her brother-in-law. So another example is the Home of Mary Collier, is one of my favorites. So the Woman's Labour that is published in 1739, so relatively early. In this poem, she describes the schedule of a day worker who runs her household while also working in the fields and during winter, the big house. It's humorous, it's smart, and it really steps into the date at the time. So Mary Collier was actually an exception, and she was a working class woman who could read and write, and she had a mistress who found out about her poem and who published it. So otherwise, in general, what you see is these early economic writings of women, they tend to be from middle and upper class women because they have been able to obtain an education and access for opportunities to publish, which was still exceptional because in general, women did not have access to education, let alone higher education. But the third example, I would like to mention here Mrs. Beeton's Book of Household Management, first published in 1861. So this line of literature, with a focus on the household, will develop during the first decade of the 20th century into the field of home economics. Political economy, a field dominated by men, will take a slightly different route, but the household remains the central unit of analysis until far into the 18th century. Okay, before the development of the industrial society takes off in England, Sarah Trapone warns women about the disposition through the developments in English marriage laws and through the shift from religious laws to natural laws propagated and put in place by the Enlightenment movement, both of which she says, in her view, would have devastating effects on women. So she warns women. In her book, The Hardships of the English Laws in Relation to Wives, she makes 3 statements. First, that the estates of wives is more disadvantageous than slavery itself. sounds pretty harsh. Her idea was that because women who married were expected to do so willingly and smilingly, right? Um, and that was made it worse than slavery, in her view. So she says that women, that wives may be made prisoners for life at the discretion of their domestic governors, whose power, as we at present apprehend it, bears no manner of proportion to that degree of authority which is vested in any other set of men in England. So this power that husbands have over their wives is just out of any boundary. Point three that she makes is that wives have no property, neither in their own persons, children, or fortunes. So she warns women, like, you're in a bad situation, be aware, you have to fight back. England's marriage laws at the time, as later described by Blackstone in 1777, would state women as being represented by their father, a brother or husband for the law at all times. So these laws were extreme, right? Even in those days. In the Netherlands, for instance, education of girls and for women, control over their inherited property was considered normal. Yeah, not in England. So in England, the situation is much more extreme than in other European countries. So let's look a little bit into this. Before, in England, Blackstone describes that the notion of femme couvert in English law was the idea that a husband and wife, that they are, so their children, are one, and that one is the husband. Yes, so that is what happens before British laws. In other words, all the capital owned by women was by marriage appropriated by their husband, who could then spend it as he liked. Yes, and this husband did so. So Adriana Roberts speaks of primitive accumulation in this respect, and I am particularly interested. I did not have time yet to kind of really dig into that. To what extent the appropriated capital has provided husbands with the, you could say, venture capital to support their early capitalist endeavors, right? How important was that particular kind of dispossession going on in the early years of the Industrial Revolution for the accumulation of capital in order for the Industrial Revolution to take off? Okay. Similar points are made across the channel in France, right? Olympe de Gouges, somewhat later during the French Revolution, de Gouges was a revolutionary who fought for full citizenship for women. So she joins the revolution and she writes a lot of feminist tracts, but those tracts made her end up in prison. In prison, she writes a letter to Queen Marie Antoinette, trying to appeal to her experience as a woman and her power position as a queen. Well, she actually, 1 year before Mary Wollstonecraft does more or less the same, she demands the right to full citizenship for women, right to vote. She also demands equal pay for equal effort, work, that she is special, and the demands for the right of women to a divorce, really prominent in these feminist discussions at the time. Since her revolutionary panels do not appreciate her feminist publications and activism, they killed her by guillotine. In the United States, African American women wrote diaries about their experience and the system of slavery, another form of primitive accumulation and dispossession. These texts give a grueling perspective on these economic practices in Southern agriculture and also in the more industrial North. So the role of slavery as a form of primitive accumulation that substantially contributed to the industrial development and wealth in the US has not been addressed for centuries. Yes, let alone that attention was paid to the economic experiences of women like Sojourner Truth, you can see here. These diaries that have been published more broadly over the past few decades tell us about the daily experiences and struggles of these women. Right? They talk about violence, about separation from their husband and children. They talk about being sold as property, being used as equity for loans, and also about how they were even robbed from their savings. So these experiences and insights have long not been perceived as part of economic thinking, as the focus has been fully on white men's interests, questions, and concerns. So then England starts to industrialize. The dispossession of women does not stop with the development of industrial society and the economic growth that follows. On the contrary, this remains a continuing matter. In addition, what we see is that an important part of industrialization meant the moving of production from inside the household to workshops and factories, and with that under the full control of men. This brought about and made possible economies of scale, and in addition, the large-scale extraction of resources from nature and the development and use of technology. So this is where the history of economic thought generally starts. There he is, Adam Smith, right? The man who gets to be known as the father of the discipline. Well, in both the Theory of Moral Sentiments in 1759 and his Wealth of Nations in 1776, Adam Smith makes a substantial move, which will impact economic thinking for the centuries to come. So Smith models his economic theories after Isaac Newton's theory of gravity. And in doing so, he shifts the focus from the household as a central unit to the analysis of man as a rational and exchanging individual, as a man who represents women for the law. He wrote particularly for legislators using their language. He focused on man who is the head of the household and man who is involved in productive labor, right? By doing that, Adam Smith wrote women out of his books, and the household, including women, children, and others who lived and produced there, out of his economic theory. He literally turned his back on the family or household. We are still facing those consequences of that move today. Okay, back to women's economic writing then. Since I cannot talk about all the work of women economic writers and women economists, I would like to push a flashlight on a few groups of women economic writers and economists who were working together, right? Okay. I would like to pass by the blue stockings of Elizabeth Montagu in London, halfway the 18th century, because we've passed that period. We are now kind of focusing on halfway the 19th century, and I would like to talk a little bit about the Langham Place group in London. The Langham Place group in London got its name from the place where they were meeting, and it was a rather large group of writers, artists and intellectuals, some of whom focused on economic political arguments to improve women's social economic position. They, for instance, pushed for a bill that would provide women the right to divorce, and another bill that gave women control over their earnings, which they managed to get approved in 1882, the Married Women's Property Act. Better education, only recognized by early socialists as of any economic importance, right, was for centuries for the women's movement an important goal of the struggles, as was access to a wider set of professions. Caroline Haley Dahl, living in the US, who was inspired by and in contact with the Langham Place group, talks in a book, The College, the Market, and the Court of 1867, about women's wages and about the fact that these wages were way too low to be able to live an independent life on. So Dahl stressed the problem that due to these low wages, women were ending up on the streets as prostitutes. Okay. These women that ended up on the streets, what happened was that in case their husband died, right, they would have to take care of themselves and their children. And in doing so, they experienced the adding of insult to injury. So economists at the time did not perceive them as rational agents who worked to earn an honest living and make sure their children survived, right? But they perceived them as moral failures. The unit of analysis, after all, was the head of the household. Okay. Another group of economic writers emerges from the Fabians, a group of left-leaning intellectuals in London. So during the late 19th century, people like Bernard Shaw, H.G. Wells, Beatrice Potter Webb, Sidney Webb, a whole bunch of them, among others, conduct economic research and engage in theorizing to achieve socialism through reform, not revolution. So socialism for this group of economists is kind of the sun at the horizon. And then, against the background of a strengthening of women's movement at the time, a group of women members of the Fabians point at a lack of serious attention for women's economic issues, and they started the Fabians Women's Group in 1907. So here are some of them. Beatrice Potter Webb, who writes a Minority Report on poverty, right? She conducts empirical research. She writes about a difference in wages between women and men and about many other things. So Mabel Atkinson writes about the economic foundation of the women's movement and provides a clear economic explanation of the class division in the women's movement. Really interesting. That is Mabel Atkinson. Then we have Eleanor Rathbone. She tries to explain again the wage gap, and that's by pointing to the family wage that was paid to husband at the time, and she makes the plea for family allowances, which becomes really influential. Elizabeth Lee Hutchins is an economic historian who writes about the history of factory legislation and about women in industry. Sorry. So during this period, end of the 19th century, you see that women make increasingly use of the new access to higher education. Women start to get their PhD in economics. Beatrice Potter Webb and her husband, they've founded the new school of London School of Economics, LSE. And that school is open for women, economics department at that school, and women really become active as economic historians. Very interesting. Okay, as a third group, I would like to mention the women economists from the US, from Chicago University more in particular. So after Edith Abbott and Sophia Breckenridge conduct research at the School of Social Research at Chicago University on housing, school attendance, and crime under youth, among other topics, it is Hazel Kirk who finds a job at a home economics department at University of Chicago in 1925. And then 3 years later, she's appointed at the economics department at the same university. So Kirk publishes her book, A Theory of Consumption, in 1923. And where the marginalist economists like William Stanley Jevons at the time develop and limit themselves to an economic approach of consumer behavior that is, as Kirk indicates, merely price theory, Kirk develops a comprehensive consumer theory in which we include goal setting, the values that play a role, budgeting, the process of budgeting, of decision making, also the impact of marketing on consumer choices, really interesting because that has kind of vanished from the screen of economists. And she also includes the process of deciding between whether to make or to buy a good. So Margaret Reed a PhD student of Kirk, focuses on productive consumption in the household, and she defines complete household production as those activities that you can hire somebody else to do them for you, right? And that becomes a real influential criterion for making that distinction between personal care and household production. And there's Elizabeth Hoyt, who also wrote on consumption for wealth. Okay, thus far, I've been focusing on bringing in the voices of women and addressing gender issues. So over the past 15 years, and working in the US, I've been realizing the limitation of a singular gender perspective. So in the same way as it is insufficient to just bring in women into one's research, so to say, to add women in stir, right, without paying attention to the way notions of gender have impacted institutions, values, language, and symbols, it became more and more clear to me that one cannot stop by just adding a few women of color here and there, right? Although it's definitely a start. So I would like to introduce here Sadie Alexander as a good example of how this works. Okay, in the US, Sadie Tanner Russell Alexander is the first African-American woman and person to obtain a PhD in economics in 1921. This is her thesis, The Standard of Living of 100 Negro Migrant Families in Philadelphia. Due to racial segregation and gender discrimination, she realized that there was no career open to her in economics. So as a Black person, she would have to teach in a historical Black college, but at these colleges, she would not have a chance being a woman, right? So she counted her fingers, said, okay, this is not going to work. So she moves to getting her law degree. And later on, she becomes very active, influential, and famous for her work in the civil rights movement. So in order to fully grasp, however, what Alexander faced in her days, we need to realize that the economics discipline was dominated by eugenic reasoning at the time. Alexander went against the grain, where economists like Evan Fisher explained poverty among Black migrants by hereditary features of their race. Alexander, on the basis of extensive empirical survey, concludes that it is rather a lack of education, a lack of consumer training, and housing and discrimination in the labor market that keeps African Americans from reaching the middle class. So her work was only recently collected by Nina Banks and published in February 2022. It's really strong work. It's well worth reading, and it's cutting edge in her days. But she, as a scholar, got lost for economics. So to more fully comprehend the role of race in early economics, we need to take a broader perspective on the economics discipline at the time and take into account not only structural context in terms of economic position of African American community at the time, the political context in terms of academic, of legislation and institutional discrimination, but also the ideological and academic notions with respect to race that were being used in economics and beyond economics at the time. So it's here that the role of eugenics comes to the fore. So evolutionary thinking and the more problematic version of negative eugenics that set out to limit the reproduction of groups that these eugenic thinkers considered as unfit and threatening to the health of the stock, meaning the white race in the United States. That kind of thinking emerged in the beginning of the 20th century in the United States and then practically takes over academia. It's very strongly represented in early economics. And not in the least, and that is what we have to realize as progressive thinkers, right, is early progressive thinkers and policymakers were also jumped on that wagon and some really propagated those notions. When you read Alexander in that context, it adds a new layer of understanding with respect to the language she uses and the way she positions herself in various debates. So in a similar way, when we want to understand the work of Native American women, we need to go back to the context and take not only the economic and structural context and political and legal structure that Native Americans faced at the time into account, but again, also notions around race that were becoming increasingly dominant in academia and economics in the 1920s and 1930s. So the impact of eugenic thinking has escaped most historians of economics thought, even though it was practically the proverbial water in which the academics fish swam. We see happily kind of a turning of the tide in this respect, is increasing attention, but it's very recent. Looking, for instance, at one Native American woman, a leader of her people, Mimi Cornelius Kellogg, who wrote Our Democracy and the American Indian, a comprehensive representation of the Indian situation, and it is today, 1920. So here she proposes a plan to make the reservations of the Haudenosaunee, 6 nations of Native Americans living in and around New York State, economically productive. Okay, she fights for getting there. She fights for paying attention to the She fights for getting her lost lands back. That's what she does. And she pushes to bring New York State to court. Well, she didn't make friends there, right? So paying attention to the economic and political context, what we see is the dire situation of Native Americans or American Indians, the term that Kellogg uses, were in at the time, right? And the uncertain legal situation they faced. So we also see the oppressive behavior of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Kellogg was very, very critical of. And Kellogg also acted as a negotiator with the federal government. So looking at the eugenic ideology provides a more profound understanding of the explicit and implicit reasoning Kellogg faced as a woman and as a Native American, and the way that she positions herself and navigates the field of tension. So what we see, while her writing remained invisible to academic economists of the days, her policy clothes of self-determination, right, making the reservations productive and bringing land claims to court has found full recognition in the 2020s. Okay, so when we take this realization back to analyzing the work of mainly white women in the field of economics and home economics on consumption during those days, so let's go back to this group and take that perspective of eugenic reasoning into account, what we see is that some of these women, like Elizabeth Hoyt, for instance, made rampant use of both evolutionary and eugenic notions about race, racial development, regression, fitness, etc. Many early feminist thinkers, like Charlotte Douglas Gilman, Margaret Sanger, for instance, did the same. Hazel Kirk, on the other hand, seemed to be able to, like Kellogg, successfully navigate her way out of the eugenic rabbit holes. But when we look again at Kirk's statistical work, assumption about white Native Americans and Native Negro Americans, kind of standard term at the time, and her reasoning, and just her choice of categories. It's this kind of questioning that we need to do as feminist historians of economics, where it concerns the thinking of early economic economists, early feminist economists, right? Okay. Nevertheless, even though some of these women go with a dominant approach in economics, the work of this group of economists become marginalized as policy research and as home economics. Home economists were not considered economic experts at the time, they were excluded as such. And the research on consumer behavior vanishes from economics as a study altogether, only later to appear as part of business economics, right? And the research on home economics is at best being perceived as merely statistical analysis and being conducted by the census and other statistical bureaus. Okay, nonetheless, but then Gary Becker appears at the stage. Gary Becker is the mainstream economist who applied what he referred to as the economic method, short for a simplified version of mainstream economics, to the economic analysis of households, crime, and of addictive behavior. And he gets the Nobel Prize in economics for his work in 1992. So he uses this idea of productive consumption and production in the household. And it's only under pressure that he admits that Reed was the one who coined the definition of household production and that he actually used that concept. So the work by Hazel Kirk, however, on consumption and on the family in the American economy is rediscovered only decades later, and that of Sadie Alexander and Winnie Kellogg only in the past few years. Okay, so let me wrap up. Bringing in a women's perspective can make us realize that the household and household management is very much part of the economy. Instead, it should be perceived as such instead of being excluded based on a public-private division, right? So taking up the lens of women's economic writing brings back into focus the various processes of disposition that form the basis of industrial society, the role and the importance of education for economic production and for wealth, and the points at the need for a far more explicit analysis of the process of consumption, right? Why and how do we value consumption? How is the process of consumption organized? How does economic decision making concerning consumption takes place? All those questions should be deserve much more attention. And including into that, how can waste be prevented? And that was a topic that was also extensively addressed by economists like Charlotte Perkins Gilman and the early Chicago women economists. Okay, talking about waste and with an eye on the future, I want to kind of bring up the last theme. Women writers and economists contributed fundamentally to the rethinking of the economy and the theorizing of sustainable development. Women economic writers and women economists have been pathfinders on issues like pollution, use of pesticides, use of the commons, use of women's use and control of land, and economic theorizing around climate and modeling for sustainable development. So women have really had much more than they were present in economics, a strong voice on environmental matters. So taking a feminist and historical or long-time view of the economy into account, and by being aware and acknowledge earlier feminist economic scholarship, and by bringing in anti-racist and sustainable perspectives, we can achieve a much richer understanding of how and why we and the economy we're living in came to the point where we are now, right? By those who apply different perspectives, and working with them, we may prevent ourselves and others from making previous mistakes again. and that may bring us new perspectives and horizons. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your attention. Bye.